Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Pathfinder Barbarian, and we're going to draw some parallels to the fighter that we talked about already. If you haven't seen my fighter video, if you're interested in creating a fighter maybe, check out the link in the description. So the Barbarian differs from the fighter. The fighter, as we talked about earlier, is kind of the blank slate. It can kind of be anyone. In a role-playing sense, the Barbarian is more the creature, the human, whatever race it might be, that draws its strength from the rage. It angers easily and it draws all its power from the rage, and that's kind of how the skills also work out. We talked about earlier how characters are balanced in Pathfinder, and in my opinion they're balanced along two axes. One is combat prowess and one is utility. Utility is things such as skill points, and maybe you're able to solve encounters by having ways of getting through damage resistances and stuff like that. I would put the Barbarian very close to the fighter. As we talked about, the fighter is about 100% combat prowess, 0% utility. The Barbarian is a little bit more on the utility side of things. The Barbarian is like 80% combat prowess, 20% utility. So they have a little bit more utility. They gain more skill points than the fighter gain, and they're kind of balanced in a way where they're very strong on level 1, but if you compare to a fighter, the longer time goes by, the fighter accrued so many passive abilities that they're kind of always as strong as the Barbarian are when they're raging. When the Barbarian is raging, he will be about the same strength as a fighter, but when a Barbarian rage ends, the fighter still retains all his bonuses, so they're a little bit worse in that sense. But there are a couple of other things which makes the Barbarian stand out, and in some cases makes them stronger than the fighter. And we're also going to talk about this in a unfair sense. Unfair meaning the unfair difficulty in Pathfinders. We're going to talk about all these skills and evaluate them based on how good they are in the highest difficulty. And this also means that anything that I say is good in unfair will of course also be good in the lower difficulties. So first we gain rage, of course, with the Barbarian, which is kind of the signature, not so signature spell, but the signature ability of the Barbarian. So the Barbarian gains a +2 bonus on attack melee rolls and melee damage rolls. This is kind of like having +4 strength, kind of the same thing as that, but they also gain a will saving bonus, and they take a -2 penalty to armor class. She also gains 2 temporary hit points per hit die. This translates, of course, to 2 temporary hit points per level. So the rage is quite strong. And it's very strong when you get on level 1, which makes the Barbarian kind of the perfect class to go into level 1, even if you want to go with a fighter, because the Barbarian is so strong on level 1, and if you're playing Pathfinder Kingmaker, you know that the first encounters that you're up against in level 1 are the hardest. They're gonna be increasingly easier as time goes on, but the initial encounters are very difficult, so having that extra edge of having a Barbarian can be very strong. Also, Barbarian starts out with extra hit points. They have the highest hit die in the game, at least what's implemented now in Pathfinder Kingmaker. They have 12 hit points on level 1, plus your constitution bonus, +1 for your favorite class, of course. So they're very strong on level 1. But as I said, the rage kind of is the same thing as the fighter's weapon focus or weapon training, but the fighter retains his weapon training. He doesn't need to go into rage. He doesn't go out of weapon training at any point. So it's kind of a temporary buff. They also have rage powers, which kind of is the same thing as the fighter talents, and in a way these rage powers will be about the same power level as what you can get from a fighter's talents, and you will get things which are even as strong as weapon mastery when you get to the higher levels of the Barbarian. So the Barbarian is very close in terms of combat prowess to the fighter, but they need the rage to be that strong. They also get a little bit faster movement when they're not wearing heavy armor. They gain uncanny dodge, which makes them not being able to be catch flat-footed, which is the same as the rogue ability. They also gains improved uncanny dodge, which improves this ability and make them able to not get flanked or get sneak attacked, which makes them very good against rogue characters, which there are a few, admittedly, in this game. They also gain danger sense, which is a plus bonus on the reflex save against traps, which is, in my opinion, a worthless ability. It doesn't matter. Do you want to you know, mind sweep with your Barbarian. Well, maybe they have a lot of hit points, so maybe it will work out for you. But in the, you know, later in the game, the traps will become very, very dangerous. Not that because they deal so much damage, but because they give like negative levels. They charm your characters permanently, and they do stuff like that. So you really don't want to have your Barbarian trigger these traps manually. So I don't think Danger Sense is such a useful ability. Neither is damage reduction. You get to subtract 1 from the damage that the Barbarian takes, starting on 7th level. The problem is at 7th level, in Unfair, because the damage is doubled, everything is dealing so much damage to you that the damage reduction doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it does not matter at all that you have damage reduction. But maybe on the lower difficulties, will do something. They also gain Indomitable Will, which is a +4 bonus on will saves to resist enchantment spells. This would have been nice if this was just a static +4 bonus to will saves, or if it was against death magic, because death magic at this point is much more dangerous than enchantment spells. I mean, enchantment spells are still dangerous, but mostly what you're going to be up against at this point is going to be death magic. So if you're going to survive in the very late game, you need to have a very good fortitude, and then a very good will save, else your character will die, no matter who he is in Unfair. So let's have a look at the subclasses. We have Armored Hulk, which is specialized in wearing heavy armor, so they gain heavy armor proficiency on level 1, which, remember, the Barbarians do not. The regular Barbarians do not get the heavy armor proficiency, but instead they don't get Uncanny Dodge. So they're a little bit better with heavy armor. They also get first they get a +5 extra movement speed with that armor, and then they get a 10 extra armor speed, which is kind of like the Barbarians' fast movement, but the Armored Hulk also gets it even with heavy armor, which is quite nice. So if you want to go into heavy armor and Barbarian, then this might be the class for you. But I would say that if you're going with this route, then a fighter is probably better, in my humble opinion. You do get damage reduction, just like the Barbarian, and you do get Resilience of Steel, which makes you, while wearing heavy armor, get plus bonus to AC that applies on critical confirmation rolls only. So you don't get a +1 to AC every 3rd level or something. That would have been good. Then maybe you could have, been a very, very good tank. But I think that if you're going for this type of character, then a fighter is better. Unless you have some role-playing reasons for going this, I think this is one of the weaker Barbarian classes that you can go for. Instead, what I would recommend, if you want the strongest class of the Barbarians, it's the Mad Dog. He's way above all other Barbarians in terms of power level, if we're talking Unfair level here. Because they gain a Animal Companion, and they get a very, very good feat on level 2. So first, they get an Animal Companion. Having an Animal Companion in Unfair makes the game about twice as easy, or however you want to put that into words. So what you're gonna start off with is a Smilodon, which is what I would recommend that you start off with because it has 5 attacks. But there are some arguments for other animal companions. For instance, the Boar has the highest armor class on level 1, so if you're doing a low level campaign, if you're not doing the main campaign in Pathfinder, then maybe the Boar could be better for you. Also, if you're going for the ultra late game, then the Leopard will outshine the Smilodon because it has some better stat gain. And you can just polymorph your Leopard into a Dragon, and they will have 5 attacks just like the Smilodon. So other than that, you also gain the Pack Tactics, which is a very, very good bonus. At 2nd level, a Mad Dog and her War Beast gains +4 bonus on attack rolls while flanking the same opponent, instead of the normal +2. So this kind of makes up for the fact that they don't get Rage on level 1. Not only does it make up for, not only do you get the Animal Companion, you also get level 2 Pack Tactics. So this is a very, very good feat. On level 4, you still get Rage though, so you're not really losing out on anything with picking the Mad Dog. I mean, you're maybe losing out a little bit because you don't get Rage on level 1. But at the same time, I would trade that Rage for an Animal Companion, anytime, at any point. It's just better. Just better in every single way. You get a little bit fewer Rage powers, which doesn't matter too much because you're going to be able to pick up all the necessary Rage powers that you need anyways. And they get a little bit less damage reduction. But this is just maybe you could even class it an overpowered class if you're going for Unfair. It's very, very good. The last class is the Invulnerable Rager, which is a little bit of a miss for me, unfortunately. The Armored Hulk and the Invulnerable Rager, I don't think they're as strong as they could have been. So the Invulnerable Rager is focused about the rage mechanic. They don't get the uncanny dodge, unfortunately. They get the rage powers, same as the Barbarian, and they get a little bit earlier, they get the damage reduction. But as I said, damage reduction doesn't matter. I mean, maybe on level 2 it could matter this much. But in the later levels, you're always in danger of getting one shot from enemies. So having a little bit of damage reduction does not matter. You gain extreme endurance, which is 1 point of fire resistance and 1 point of cold resistance, but this will not matter. If you have a normal party, you're going to have a wizard which can cast protection from fire and cold and lightning and all these elements on you anyway, starting at somewhere around level 6, level 7. So having 1 point of resistance does not matter, and if you really want that 1 point of resistance, you might as well go into something like an Aasimar or a Tiefling, which have natural resistances against that anyways. So for me, this class is kind of a miss, much like the Armored Hulk. But the standard Barbarian is very strong, and so too is the Mad Dog. If you go into creating a Barbarian, if you talk about the normal Barbarian here, we can go to the class, we can go, let's see, skills. What I would recommend for a skill distribution is maybe something like this for Unfair. Where you have a lot of constitution, you have a lot of strength. You really need a lot of strength. If you've seen my guide, link in the description, how to beat the early game in Unfair, you'll see that you're very, very reliant on having a good melee attack roll. Here we have a +6 roll. 1 from our base attack bonus, because we're a melee class, and 5 from our strength bonus, but we need to buff this up to something like 7, 8, 9 to have a reasonable chance to hit something, because the earliest mobs have armor class 22, so if you have +6, then you're going to hit them on like 15, 16, 17, depending on what other bonuses you add in there. So you need things like weapon focus, you need to charge them, you need to do everything to be able to actually hit them in combat. And you also need constitution. Of course, you could go dexterity and try to create a lot of dexterity bonus to maybe boost your AC, but I think in long term, constitution will be better. On lower levels, yes, you're going to get one shot, your constitution is not gonna matter too much, but in the later levels, being able to take 1 or 2 more hits can be the difference between staying alive and dying. And if you die in Unfair, you're probably gonna have to reload. It's very, very cumbersome, so I much prefer having more constitution. Because remember, you can defeat Unfair with anything. Any class, you can pick anything, but if you want to do it without having to reload as much as possible, well, that's kind of your goal with trying to create a good character for Unfair. So that's what I would suggest, something like this. And then for your skill points, because you get a lot, I would focus on this class, unless this is your main character. If this is your main character, there's an argument for going with Persuasion. Also, there's an argument for going with Use Magic Device. If you're going with a party which doesn't have a cleric, for instance, then your main character, someone at least, needs to pick up Use Magic Device, because there are some scrolls that you need to have. For instance, Restoration and Great Restoration will be needed in your party. Unless you're all monks and you can clear any diseases off yourself or something, then maybe you don't need it. But except for that, you're gonna need someone to be able to cast Restoration on your party. Here we have Athletics, Mobility, and Trickery. You can do any stat points here, but remember that the Barbarian is best with these kind of physical, bodily, I don't know what to call them, these skills right here, these upper skills, and they're not as good with like Knowledge Arcana, Knowledge World, because they get a minus to them, because you're probably not going to be super intelligent nor charismatic on this character, because it doesn't benefit the character in any way. But the Barbarian is very good for passing your athletics checks, for instance, so that's quite good. Also, if you're the main character, then having Persuasion I think is very good. Even though we have a -2 modifier here, I think that Persuasion can get you through a lot of dialogue options with a lot of XP if you choose Persuasion. So there's an argument there for going with Persuasion. For abilities, we go to that. Takes a little bit of time. I would go something like Weapon Focus. You can go for any two-handed weapon. I would recommend a two-handed weapon for Barbarian. It's kind of stereotypical, yes, but it also works best for them. Because if you want a very armored character, then Barbarian might not be the best, because they have Rage, which gives them a natural minus to their armor class. So they're just gonna be outclassed by a fighter. So if you want to create a very heavily armored character, then create a fighter instead, is my suggestion. These guys should be your heavy damage dealers. So I would recommend a two-handed weapon, and later on in the game I would spec into power attack, but you don't need it on level 1 because it's going to be so difficult to hit something anyways, so you don't want to reduce the saves too much. But on level 4, level 5 you're starting to pick up level +1 or +2 weapons, and at that point it's very good to spec in the power attack. But you can never go wrong with something like focus on Earthbreaker or focus on Greatsword. Or Great Axe. Doesn't matter too much which one you select. We're gonna select Earthbreaker because it's a great weapon. And that is pretty much it. As for the class, I didn't talk too much about the alignment. The Barbarians are a little bit restricted in that they can only be, as you can see, they can only be neutral, neutral good, chaotic neutral, and chaotic evil, and neutral evil. They can't be lawful in any way, which means they can't combine well with paladins or monks, which is a bummer because those would have been very, very good classes to gain like your charisma bonus to AC, which would have been good for them, or they could have gained the paladins saving throw bonus, which they can't gain. But they're quite good to dip into a little bit. For instance, they're very good to start off with to gain an extra health boost and to get rage, and then you can go into fighter later on. So that's one way of doing things. Yeah. That's pretty much my guide to the Barbarian and how to handle him or her for unfair difficulty. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next episode.